Chris, we'll talk more about Iran in just a moment. But first, what are the challenges facing Israel's Operation Gideon's Chariots, this new assault on Hamas?
Ephraim, one of the biggest challenges facing Gideon's Chariots is actually moving the population of Gaza and removing them as human shields that Hamas has been using ever since the beginning of the war. What they're trying to do is have these humanitarian areas where people can go to get safety and humanitarian aid. And we know just a few days ago on Sunday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu began sending in aid back into Gaza. The reason for the stoppage was that they wanted to keep the Hamas from stealing the food. Actually, in the Gideon's Chariots is actually now 5 divisions of reservists and soldiers inside Gaza, hundreds of airstrikes. And as we've talked about before, Ephraim, the goal is to control all of Gaza. They call it clear and control, squeeze Hamas, put the pressure to release all of the hostages, and then and hopefully end the war.
Israel has been facing criticism from the United Kingdom, Canada, and France. What is Israel's reaction to that?
Well, first of all, what happened, the UK, France, and Canada, they issued a statement on Monday. They were condemning Israel's handling of the humanitarian aid inside Gaza. They also demanded a Palestinian state. And so Netanyahu reacted. He said the state, a Palestinian state, would be a prize for what was a genocidal attack on October 7th. He reiterated what happened on October 7th, that it was a defensive war. Hamas murdered 1,200 innocent people and abducted over 250. He says, Netanyahu, that is, the war could end tomorrow if the hostages were released and Hamas surrenders, and then have their leaders exiled, and then Gaza demilitarized. He says no nation could be expected to accept anything less. He calls it a war of civilization over barbarism, and these was the reaction to these 3 nations. Also, Gideon, the foreign minister of Israel, said Israel's fighting for its very existence, and it won't accept any dictates from outside with regard to Israel's national security.
Chris, what is the outlook on talks on the hostages?
Well, right now, we know the latest is that there's been a 2-month ceasefire, and now we have the, Gideon's Chariots resumed. Qatar's prime minister has said that there's a fundamental difference between the 2 sides. He says the talks are stalled. What Israel is demanding is the release of all the hostages, Hamas to disarm or surrender, and that Hamas can't rule Gaza. Hamas demands on the other side will be the end of the war and Israel pulls out all of its troops, and then Hamas would survive. Right now, Qatar's blaming Israel because of the new offensive, but also Israel's getting pressure from the White House. President Trump, according to its spokesman, would like to see, wants to see an end to the conflict. On the other hand, U.S. envoy Adam Boehler, he says Hamas is the main force holding back a deal.
You mentioned in your report that Iran's supreme leaders call for the destruction of Israel once again. What's Israel's reaction?
Well, I think this is the typical rhetoric by Khamenei that's been going on for years. They call for death to Israel, death to the United States. They also said that Trump was using U.S. power to bring a massacre in Gaza and dropping bombs on children and waging wars anyway. They called for the destruction of Israel as well, the Zionist entity. Sometimes they don't even use the word Israel, calling it a source of corruption, a cancerous tumor that would be eradicated, and it would be. So behind all this is their motivation for a nuclear weapon. And many people here in Israel say, when they say these things, you need to believe them when they clearly tell you what their agenda is. This all comes just a day after President Trump's Middle East visit. But on the other hand, they say they'll continue the nuclear talks despite this harsh rhetoric by Khamenei. And on the other hand, President Trump has repeatedly vowed Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, as he said last week, that all action would be taken to stop Tehran's program.